Recently, Korea has decided to shut down its oldest nuclear reactor and signed a new nuclear cooperation agreement with the United States. So we will focus on nothing other than Korea's nuclear issues today. We'll discuss what this country has been doing so far and why we must work further closely together with the world community, right here in this program, Upfront.
Uranium is an element traditionally used to make glaze for potteries or ceramic tiles. However, when uranium is enriched and undergoes nuclear fission, another chemical element called plutonium is produced, which is also put through nuclear fission. The enormous amount of energy produced during this process is atomic energy. This was first introduced to the world as the atomic bomb, used to defeat Japan during the Second World War in 1945. After the Second World War ended, the Atoms for Peace program was announced, which aimed to make use of atomic energy for generating electric power instead. This led to commercial nuclear reactors being built around the world. Nuclear power is not only more efficient than fossil fuels, it also does not emit greenhouse gases that cause global warming. However, in 2011, a large-scale nuclear disaster took place in Fukushima, Japan, the worst since the 1986 Chernobyl disaster in Ukraine. This led to a global controversy over the use of nuclear power plants. The Fukushima disaster marked a complete U-turn in nuclear policies around the world. Nuclear power contains a risk of widespread radioactive contamination, which would be a great global disaster. It is also difficult to store and process waste materials. A growing number of countries are reconsidering their nuclear policies by shutting down or minimizing the use of their nuclear plants. However, there are also countries that continue to prioritize the development of nuclear power and have resumed their nuclear projects. The world will run out of conventional energy sources like coal and oil sooner or later, and alternatives like solar energy and hydropower are not ready to replace them. Thus, nuclear energy remains essential for many countries, especially importers of energy like Japan and Korea. On this week's Upfront, we discuss the controversial issue of nuclear power plants and our future.
Okay, for the discussion of these important issues today, we have very prominent guests on our panel. First of all, we have Dr. Fujiie Yoichi joining us. He's a former chairman of Japan's Atomic Energy Commission. And we have Professor Hyung-kook joining us from Chung-Ang University. He's a professor of political science and international relations. Thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
We have so many questions to cover. First of all, Dr. Fujiie, first thing that comes to our mind when we face Japan's atomic energy expert, the question of Fukushima.
Yes.
How things have been changing ever since the unfortunate disaster. Was it 4 years ago? How has Japan been changing after its aftermath?
Due to the earthquake and tsunami, not a human error. Therefore, we had some kind of accident with release of radioactive product, about 1/10 of a Chernobyl accident, but biggest one in Japan.
Right. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
And at the same time, the destruction of the building occurred and the fire due to the hydraulic explosion occurred.
Right.
Therefore, people watch the TV through such a destruction and the fire.
Right.
They cannot know how much radioactive material came through. Therefore, they discuss only the superficial phenomena.
Of course.
Yeah. It's
Dr. Fujiie, the thing is, it was a very unfortunate accident, and so many people have lost their lives, and lost their lives, and that we have a lot to talk about in terms of the tragic accident itself. But what we are wondering more about is in terms of Japan's nuclear policy after the disaster,
Yeah.
how has it been changing?
I should answer at first that who is dead? We have no such a people due to the radiation effect. No one dead. But due to the accident, earthquake and tsunami, not due to the nuclear accident, about 20,000 people are dead due to the earthquake and tsunami.
Right.
Yeah.
Not necessarily as a result of the nuclear accident, right? That's one thing we have to keep in mind for sure. Professor Kim, switching back, maybe perhaps following on that, the issue, the nuclear power generation has become such an important international issue after the Fukushima. What is your observation in terms of how this issue of, nuclear power generation becoming such an international issue? For instance, we understand, Germany, Belgium, and Switzerland have decided to discontinue with their nuclear power generation. What are some of the aftermath that you see on a global scale?
Of course, Germany is under the Prime Minister Merkel. They decide to stop, the nuclear, the electricity, as well. The Switzerland. But Belgium is just different case.
Okay.
Belgium stopped their nuclear electricity in 2003, not 2011. It means that they already decide to stop the policy. And furthermore, I can say, of course, in Germany, they have enough resources to cover, substitute the nuclear power. But at the same time, I have to say, for example, Great Britain, England, they decide to go nuclear, the reactor, because previously they are focused much more gas coolant electric system, but they change it to now it PWR, just like our system. So one thing and another, Germans are going to end up the nuclear electricity, but at the same time, a couple of countries, including even Japan, they are going back nuclear, the electricity back again. Korea as well.
It's very clear. The last April, the Japanese government decided into the future with renewed and reconfirmation with the nuclear policy. It's very important to say here that we still have intention to develop fast reactor, but not only fast reactor, but also we have another objective, that is to treat the high-level nuclear waste together with fast reactor and district. It's very important. One is to the future, and the next is the very important items now in the public.
So Abe government's decision to go back to nuclear power generation is a set one. There will be no change.
I think from the beginning he has no intention to go back. Government at that time is not the Free Democratic, but the Democratic Party.
Right.
Yeah, it lasted about 2 years. They wanted to stop nuclear.
Okay, but for Abe government, they are
I
firm.
don't think so.
Okay, I see. Professor Kim, we have to broaden our focus here, talking about the international, impact of this accident, I suppose, such as the contamination of the seawater and so on. Now, would you say the overall nuclear power generation, that issue has become an issue that's so internationalized, we have to get the agreement and understanding of the other countries? What I'm asking is whether Fukushima incident has fundamentally changed the nature of nuclear power generation in the global context.
Yes, I think so. There is three major nuclear incidents. First, the Three Mile Island, and Chernobyl, and Fukushima recently.
Right.
They really give the lesson and really how the men have to live with the nature. But at the same time, as a people, we get together as a global society member to share the view about science and technology, and at the same time, nuclear power itself is not that dangerous if we are treated very well. Sometimes people are too much nervous about nuclear radioactivity. But I'm just going back to Korean case. We are 19 PWR. PWR is a pressurized water reactor. It is pretty much stable reactor, and the 4 other Wolsung is heavy water reactor also. Maybe previously in 1950, England's type of the gas coolant reactor is very much some risky. At the same time, Russian type also, as Chernobyl, as we see. But the Fukushima case, of course, I'm very much sorry, and I must feel very much sad to having the 20,000 people dead. But as Fujiie, Professor Fujiie said, it is because of the tsunami, water tsunami, not the man-made nuclear reactor radioactivity. There's less things focus on. At the same time, currently, internationally, the United States led the Convention on the Supplemental Compensation for Nuclear Damage. But that is one of the attempt by United States. But still, it is not wide voice because still, there are only 6 countries admit, ratified. So it's still the nuclear issue is going on. But more important thing is nuclear safety. We have to get together not only because we are much rely on the Korea-U.S. nuclear agreement, but also we also have the Korea-Japan nuclear agreement since 1990. So most people do not know. Most people only focus on Korea and the U.S. Nuclear agreement, as well as the U.S. and the Japan's civil use of the nuclear agreement. But it's between the Korea and Japan. We have to much more cooperation between 2 countries.
Let's talk about the bigger issues here. Overall concern about nuclear power generation. For those our viewers who are watching us from overseas, they may not have much understanding. First of all, would you explain to our viewers about the overall general concern that we have in Korea about the nuclear safety matters?
Well, as nuclear is, of course, there is the pros and cons. The pros is a very clean energy, and it is priced very cheap electricity. And at the same time, because of, especially our Korea, we do not have any oil and gas, so we have import most of the resources. But it's the nuclear things. Since we generate our nuclear in 1978, Korea 1, and then we supplied a lot of the electricity in order to achieve our economic development since 1970, 80. That's why we have built our own country, such as we are now established ourselves as a member of the G20, OECD country, and one of the big growing NICS country. So that's basically rely on that kind of the investment for the heavy chemical industry since 1970. That's still the nuclear industry, not only industry but also because of it can be used as a bomb. That's why the IAEA working very hard, and they inspect even in my country, our country, in the Wolsung, especially in the heavy water reactor, have generated a lot of the possible plutonium. That's why they have IAEA persons have to inspect that whether they observe it can use as invent of the bomb. But that is one thing. But the other thing is nuclear. Since Albert Einstein, that is it contributed for the human being to use really the particle and
I mean, we have this long list of reasons why we need nuclear energy here in Korea. But I think in the minds of many Koreans here, especially on the progressive side of the politics, like progressive politicians and NGOs here in Korea who support progressive agendas. They are very much concerned about the nuclear safety here in Korea, especially after Fukushima accident. Any words of advice on that case? They, about their concerns and so on. Are their concerns totally illegitimate? And what would you say?
In Japanese case, you mean?
In Korea.
In Korea case.
Right.
I have not make a research so fully on the Korea, but this time the accident didn't include so much part of the nuclear safety. It is very important to ask the public to understand. It's only the earthquake and tsunami
Right.
to make a destruction. But therefore, we didn't have such a big radiological burden from that one.
But the thing is, Professor Kim, the opponents of nuclear power generation here in Korea, their argument is we should not rule out the possibility of natural disasters. And if we actually have something similar happening here in this country to our nuclear facilities, we will have to suffer through the same kind of disasters here. I think that seems to be a concern, isn't it?
Well, I have slightly different point of view. In our case, it's much more safe than Japan. We are, it's Japan directly faced with Pacific Ocean, and then there is also the earthquake is very much highly probable. But in our cases, the more important thing is in case North Korea. North Korea is more the heavy the nuclear bomb rather than ours is rely on peaceful use of nuclear. So we are slightly different from North Korea. And then our problem of nuclear issues, we do not have much storage for the spent fuel. That is really problem, I think, spent fuel. And then even the Korea and the U.S. civil use of a nuclear agreement that is not solved yet. Not solved yet. So still we are going to, in comparison with the U.S.-Japan nuclear agreement since the 1970s, they already have a reprocessing plant in Rokasho is right. But we do not have any reprocessing plant. That is really, we have to go more in negotiation with the U.S.
Right. Talking about the international cooperation, let's get to that point that you have raised earlier, the Convention on Supplementary Compensation for Nuclear Damage, the U.S.-led initiative. Professor Kim, could you explain to our viewers what this is a multilateral agreement, right? Basically, what does it do?
Multilateral agreement, but it's very much the small, narrow multilateral. Why? Because the U.S. initiated in 1973 because the Chernobyl, and then the 19 countries signed, but 6 countries ratified. 6 countries. Which country do you think ratified?
Is Korea included?
No.
Okay.
Japan, Canada is all right.
France?
No.
Okay.
No England.
Oh, okay.
No German. Which country? U.S. and Morocco and Argentina and Romania was the first 4 countries, and then joined Canada, later Japan. Those 6 countries. So it is not much, the strong coalition to engage the supplementary compensation for the nuclear damage. If now still Korea are hesitating to join there because China is not joined there, I think it is right decision until we wait and see whether the China agreed, because as you already mentioned, the all coastline of the east side of the China, there is almost more than 20 nuclear reactors built. So China, as long as China is joined, maybe Korea can join. Japan case is a little different, because of Fukushima. And as I told you, there is Morocco and Argentina and Romania, very less important, in terms of a nuclear reactor.
I see.
Yeah.
I think this is a good point to have a short break here. We've been talking about the nuclear issues in general, both domestic and international context here. But after this break, we will talk more about the domestic scope of these issues regarding Korea. So we'll be right back after this.
The nuclear age in Korea began with the establishment of the Kori-1 nuclear power plant in 1978. 23 nuclear reactors are currently being operated in Korea. According to data from 2014, 30% of Korea's total electricity is produced in these nuclear power plants. However, controversy has risen regarding the life extension of nuclear power plants, which have reached the end of their 30-year lifespan. On June 12th, the Korean government decided to close the country's oldest nuclear reactor, the first closure in the history of Korean nuclear power.
Most commissioners have reached a consensus on the permanent suspension of Kori-1 nuclear reactor in order to develop nuclear decommissioning technology and improve the competitiveness of our nuclear energy industry.
Now, the remaining challenge is the cost of safely decommissioning old reactors. Another issue has been the cooperation with Washington regarding the nuclear energy. Recently, Seoul and Washington signed an agreement for cooperation concerning peaceful uses of nuclear energy, which is a revised version of the Nuclear Cooperation Pact concluded in the past.
Together with this Mutual Defense Treaty of 1954 and the Koros FTA of 2012, this will be another key pillar of our alliance.
U.S.-Korea partnership is an absolute anchor for peace and stability in your region.
The newly signed agreement, which is a revision to the Korea-U.S. Nuclear Energy Agreement, initially signed in 1972, is expected to bring some changes to Korean research and policies on nuclear energy. One of the focal points of the pact is Korea's right to enrich uranium for power generation and reprocess spent fuel rods, which was prohibited in the past agreement. In addition, in order to boost the export of nuclear reactors, Korea has been allowed to freely transfer its nuclear materials or facilities to other countries, which have concluded nuclear pacts with both Korea and the U.S. On top of that, a long-term agreement granting Korea free access to U.S. nuclear materials has been signed. Now, Korea will be able to produce and export radioactive isotopes used in cancer diagnosis without having to rely on imports as it did in the past. Many changes to Korea's nuclear energy industry are expected to take place in June. We discuss the pending issues as well as remaining challenges to Korea's nuclear power policy.
Welcome back. We are talking about various nuclear issues of Korea today with prominent panel members here in the studio. And we've been talking mostly about the general issues about, both domestic and international dimensions of these issues so far during our first part. And during the second part, we want to talk more about the Korea-specific domestic contents and context of the nuclear issues that we face in this country. So we are again having Dr. Fujiie Yoichi here in studio and also Professor Hyung-kook from Chung-Ang University. Okay, let's talk about the what's happening in Korea, of course. Professor Kim, Korea is, of course, one of the up and rising stars in terms of nuclear power generation in the world context. We have new facilities being built, but also we are reaching out overseas to help other countries to build their nuclear reactors and so on. A lot of people outside of Korea seems to be watching us with curiosity. What made it possible for Korea to rise so fast as a nuclear power or nuclear power generation star, if you will, in the global market? How would you explain that?
Well, as everybody I expect know, we are exporting country of nuclear reactor. We are built our own, the advanced power reactor, and we export 4 units to Arab Emirates. That is a wonderful achievement from Korea. We are compete against with France. And then that is one of the achievements. Since we start our the Kori-1 in 1978, how we achieved that much, our effort. At the same time, we achieved our economic growth. We are very much engaged with the heavy industry. Without the electricity, how can we build a steel-making country and a nuclear reactor?
Here in Korea, we have had so much controversy about extending the life cycle of their nuclear reactors here in Korea. Some of them, their life cycle has been expanded, and then some of them we have decided, at least one, we have recently decided to shut down the oldest one here. What's your overall take on this controversy here? You're the expert, you've been following the issues.
Okay, now it's a very important government decision, shut down one of our oldest nuclear reactor, Korea 1. But I have to add more information for the public.
Yes.
I prepared this memos.
Okay.
Especially I try to compare with the Westinghouse model of the PWR. PWR, I have to a little bit explain PWR and BWR. PWR is a two coolant, very much safe. And BWR is one coolant. That's a big difference. Whereas Fukushima model is BWR, it means one coolant.
Okay.
And
having two coolant is safer, right?
Safer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Please.
Yeah. Korea 1, Korea, of course, it is trying to construction in 1971,
Right.
and it is commercial operation started 78. License period the first 30 years. See the difference. In U.S. model, such as Point Beach 1, 2, and the Peary Island, all are 40 years. So first time we have to admit the shorter license period 30. I understandable.
Right.
This is turnkey bank style. And then 30 years later, we try to have license renewal in 2007. At the time, at those days, there is no, the Fukushima instance, so it's very much there is no controversial to renewal. After, of course, Fukushima, as many Koreans concerned about old nuclear reactors, so it is not much controversial. Although some problem, because all document was not opened yet, still. But still, and then extended period 10 years, and then all other Westinghouse model 20 years.
In the United States?
In the United States.
Okay.
So in United States, same model, Westinghouse model is such as 40 plus 20.
I see.
In Korea case, 30 plus 10.
So only 2/3
Only
of
2/3.
what the United States reactors run. Okay.
So out of these 6 nuclear reactors in USA, only one is shut down.
I see.
After using about 39 years, ours still I think based on the Ministry of the Commerce and Korean Water and Reactor Company, it's mechanically they claimed we are safe, but it's safe is another issue in terms of psychology. So it's
Professor Kim, then how do we explain this Korean uniqueness? Is it just oversensitivity about the nuclear issues, lack of knowledge? What's going on?
Oversensitivity, of course, and then lack of knowledge too. So I think the nuclear issue now all the professors and the specialists know the value of a nuclear reactor, especially PWR. But it's, some segment of our people are still distrust, not because of mechanically, but also there is some kind of bribery things happen in the company around. That is so. Anyhow, it's if Korea 1 is decided to be shut, it is still.
It could be operational in the United States.
Still, yeah. If it is located in the United States, it is still operational.
I see. Interesting. Now I have to switch to Dr. Fujiie, sir. The question I have, sir, is in Korea, we have gone through a process of deciding to shut down old nuclear reactor, the oldest one here in this country so far, and that's because of the safety concerns. And some people are saying it should have been shut down early on, and we could not decide on that because of the cost issues. What was the Japan's experience? Did you extend the life cycle of nuclear reactors before because of the cost involved with shutdown?
It's a little bit confusing to explain clearly why we stopped all the nuclear power stations, about 50. But it coming to restart, maybe I think in July, at least one from Sendai, Kagoshima will restart, and number 2 of Sendai also. And it gives very good effect to the other nuclear power stations. Then I expect the end of this year, so many nuclear power stations come back again.
I see. Professor Kim, you have been maintaining quite a clear argument here in this program so far, kind of supporting the idea of nuclear power generation as a whole. But we have to ask you this question once again. The government has recently announced its plan for long-term energy plan that will add perhaps 2 more nuclear reactors on top of the existing plan. In terms of, since you're a political scientist, I want to ask you this question, the political question here, the political timing of it. Was this the most optimal timing in terms of announcing additions to the nuclear power generator list?
Well, that is 2027, the plan for the energy. And they scrapped, the 4 coal-burnt plant. Instead of the coal-burnt plant, they tried to build nuclear reactor. Because there is climate change things, and post-2020, there is environmental issues.
Right.
At the same time,
of
course, they do the right thing, I think. But it's only people are focused on 2 nuclear reactor built was added. But I have to say, at the same time, there is non-renewable energy such as wind and solar energy also are 5 times larger than this budget. So only people are such a people for the environment. They only criticize 2 nuclear reactors will be added, but they did not say anything about 5 times larger renewable energy will be added in 2027.
I see. The thing is, though, the reason that why they are criticizing is because of the safety concerns, I think. But they also are aware of the fact that nuclear power generation itself is, what do you call it? In terms of like when it's running without accident, it's clean energy too, right?
It's the clean energy.
Right.
And then it is a manageable energy for us. Manageable, especially Korea, without any resources of coal, without any other gas and oil.
Right.
But it's at the same time, in terms of the global, the security in Northeast Asia. Look at the China and Russia and even Japan.
Right.
They all have nuclear reprocessing plant as well as they have nuclear bomb.
Right.
Obviously, North Korea too.
Okay.
Korea, without any nuclear reactor, we are almost empty for our security.
Okay. I'm sure that's kind of like a separate topic that we can deal with in another program here. But sir, in terms of overall, since you're talking about overall the nuclear power generation issue in terms of international context, we want to switch our focus here to the U.S.-Korea bilateral negotiation we just saw recently, about the agreement. There has been long extension of the negotiation process. A lot of people were waiting for the outcome. Finally, we got it. How do we explain the process that took so long in terms of like renewing this agreement? How do we explain this, sir?
Well, it's in Korea that 4 years is not that long my estimation.
Korean clock?
Korean clock.
4 years is not a long time.
It started in 1970s.
Right,
it
right.
really started since 1970s.
Right.
Even under the Park Chung-hee regime, Park Chung-hee, President, tried to get a reprocessing plant.
Right.
At the same time, plutonium. That's why he contacted with Canada. And then Wolsung was established with Canada Kandu.
This was during the 1970s?
1970s.
Okay.
1970. After that, because of the Korean Peninsula issue, President Notae-woo
Right. Declared. Right.
we have the
Nuclear-free
zone in Korean Peninsula.
Right, right.
But
So
really, is it achieved? Is it achieved? 2006, North Korea test
they're not
nuclear bomb.
cooperating for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's clear.
So that is still, the nuclear issue is not only, the nuclear as peaceful use in Korean Peninsula. They also have some military issues too. So that's very much important. Engaged with by myself. At the same time, look at this, the Korea and the U.S. civil use of atomic, the military, cooperation. Still,
Right.
we did not admit to have reprocessing plant.
That's exactly what I want to talk about, Professor Kim, at this point. The what do you call it? The further enrichment of the uranium, extracted from the spent fuel rod here. Technically speaking, if we can go a little bit further specifics here, what has been the issue here? Why did it drag or held the negotiation back so long? What's the U.S. concern? South Korea making nuclear bombs?
Well, they are worried about that, I think. But Korea, I don't think that Korea maybe Korea is one country to very much, as a member of the IAEA.
Right,
We are very much loyal to IAEA.
Exactly.
Such countries, such as, take example, India. India is not member of IAEA, but they have nuclear bomb. And then India, even in Iran, negotiation with Iran, Iran achieved more, the flexible chance to have, the nuclear enrichment.
Right,
nuclear
that's
enrichment.
what critics are saying, right?
But this, in Korea case, still, there is very much a primitive stage to get it. That's why, I a little bit disappointed when government say it is almost a nuclear sovereignty. But it's nuclear sovereignty, as long as, the Korea country have very much loyal to IAEA.
There I think we have to ask this question to Dr. Fujiie. Japan, from the very early years, got this right, allowed by the United States to reprocess its spent fuels. What made it possible for Japan to do that while Korea was not allowed? Was there a special level of trust, Dr. Fujiie, between Japan and the United States?
For aspect of the nuclear basic policy of Japan, I have to explain now, right?
Right.
The history of Japan's peaceful use of nuclear energy is based upon the people's understanding and support through the country.
Okay.
Yeah. Then I said the restart of a nuclear power plant will be made in this year. And in comparison to such a kind of a good career of a nuclear power station, 1/3 of for energy need in Japan we supply by the nuclear energy.
I see.
Yeah, but concerning to the nuclear fuel cycle, we decided from the beginning of a policy in 1955 or something, but it's not so good.
So Japan had a very early start, 1950s.
Yes,
you signed an
55,
agreement
yes.
with the United States.
Yeah.
Right.
The Eisenhower, the 1953. Ours is 55.
Okay.
Yeah.
And from that early point, was Japan allowed to do the reprocessing?
Yes.
Okay.
No, it is. I have jumped in.
Yes, Professor
That
Kim.
was in 1972. Under the Sato Eisaku Prime Ministership.
Yeah.
But
In
the basic
detail, we
law
say,
is 55 is basically
But
Nakasore.
from the beginning-
They only in the assembly.
Oh, I know that very well.
Right.
But I say now that basically with our four aspects of nuclear development. Yeah. Therefore, 72, such a kind of discussion I had so often through this Sato Eisaku and Nakasone. yeah, they tried very hard to get such a kind of consultation with the U.S.
Right, right.
But in such occasion, it's not so good in the process. Yeah.
Why not so good?
Why
not?
I was going to ask you actually.
It's not so easy to make a nuclear fuel cycle. We suffer also such a kind of problem of nuclear arm, atomic bomb.
I see, I see.
Because we had such a kind of experience already.
Right.
Yeah. Therefore, we need so long time to discuss about, and didn't find a good way to do.
So even though it looks like it's very stable in terms of cooperation between Washington and Tokyo, there has been some issues under the water, I suppose. Professor Kim, let's turn our attention to the bilateral cooperation between Japan and Korea on nuclear issues, if we may. What are some of the important issues for the bilateral cooperation between Seoul and Tokyo in terms of nuclear power generation down the road, sir?
Can I begin such a kind of mutual joint work between two countries?
Okay, yes.
They are first engaged by himself.
Right. Okay, please.
I have already this 30 years of collaboration with South Korea.
Okay.
And 2 days before, I met the former people, the former minister, or chairman of Atomic Energy Commission or something.
Right,
Yeah, five
right.
persons together. And to find out the future direction.
Okay.
The second phase to go. Yeah.
What are the main points of the second phase?
Anyway, next way is to keep the resource demand and get the harmonization with nuclear energy, with the nature and society. Up to now, we say that safety or something,
Right.
but safety should be expanded to full area, from utilization to harmonization.
I see.
With the word of harmonization, safety is so called to the society. So harmonization. How to harmonize with the society? The accident this time told me that is most important to do, and also the harmonize with the nature. It's also important to learn the nature, to assimilate the nature. This is such a kind of philosophy we should build up between two countries to lead the whole world with nuclear energy.
I see.
And to say more, the science technology of nuclear radiation or something is very important. It's a new civilization, changing from the chemical-based civilization to the nuclear-based civilization.
I see.
Such a kind of issue we can do together. We have already history of 30 years between two countries.
Here, one thing I want to add is I think international experimental thermonuclear reactor is now Cadarache in France. They are all together. Such country, U.S. and Russia and China, Japan and Korea and India.
Right.
They are fusion energy. We are now relying much on fusion energy, but fusion energy is next generation. Maybe in 10 years or 20 years later, we can not only the fast reactor. So now we have reactor things. We are now third generation of the nuclear reactor, but fourth generation is much more safer and less radiations. At the same, so that's I rely on much human reliance on science, technology, and the nature.
Right.
I thought so. Also for nuclear fusion. However, we know only the sun in the cosmos as an example of nature.
Our scope is so limited.
Yeah.
Right. So we never know.
So we can discuss it, the theory or something on the table. But where can I find out the example?
Right. Professor Kim and also Dr. Fujiie, we have to manage the time here. In closing our discussion, we want to talk a little bit about outside of nuclear energy power generation. What about other renewable energy development in Japan? Are there a lot of things going on?
Yeah. the definition renewable, I cannot understand.
Some people include nuclear energy as a renewable as well, but it's that means the scope is so broad.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Renewable is a very good word to speak to the public.
Right.
Yeah. However,
Harmonizing with the public.
yeah, but I should at first have such a kind of concept for renewable energy system.
I see.
Renewable things. One I add one is recently there is a Gasado in Jindo and the Gapado in Jeju. They are much more trying to wind power and solar power because of that land is only 300 persons living. So they can provide almost self-reliance system.
Right.
Although maybe it can extend to Ulleungdo. Ulleungdo is almost 10,000 pupils.
Right.
But still, that for that size of the population. But still, in terms of industry, nuclear industry, nuclear power is needed for steel making and heavy making, shipbuilding. So we have separate, utilities. One side is we have more focus on nuclear reactor. At the same time, the other side, wind and power, wind and solar energy also we have rely on. So it is much more harmonious between the sources.
Absolutely.
That's also important thing. Not only rely on only renewable only or the nuclear only. So it's a much more coexistence between energies.
Makes perfect sense here. Dr. Fujiie, your final words on Japan, Korea cooperating together for the future of energy down the road. What are your final words here at this panel?
I have made such a kind of collaboration with a Korean guest. I never thought some discrepancy. Yeah, we can talk everything very freely, but we need sometimes to enjoy go for something. No? Not only the nuclear energy issue.
Right.
Such a kind of full scope of our life also.
I see. Let's go beyond the boundaries in order to build
Yes.
trust in these areas for cooperation. Professor Kim, your final words on Japan-Korea cooperation for energy future.
Of course, energy. Of course, energy. That's why I engaged heavily and invite Dr. Fujiie as well. So energy. At the same time, the relationship between Korea and Japan. This year especially, 50 years normalization between Korea and Japan. So we have more understand each other together. And then we have also concern about our 70 years after the end of the Second World War.
Sure.
That's why still we are divided country, Korea. So Japan with Korea, with China and the U.S. So we have much more selective policy to survive at the same time achieve our big goal, our big goal, unification.
Right.
That's why my feeling to end.
Great. With those words of wisdom, we want to wrap up our discussion here for this program today. I want to thank big time for our prominent guest, Dr. Fujiie Yoichi, for joining us as the former commissioner for Japan's Atomic Energy Commission, and also prominent scholar here in Korea from Chung-Ang University, Professor Kim
Thank you very
Hyung-kook
much.
in Political Science and International Relations. And we want to thank our viewers for having joined us from all around the world for sure. And definitely, we want to see you back here in this program, Upfront, next time. Until then, goodbye.